So here we are looking at the Moss U5, which is, probably my, Jimbo and our second favorite of the, the Moss line. I found that the bigger we got, the more we liked it because it better fit our size and our specs. So in the U5, I think, don't know the size. It might be a 157 or a 154. I can't tell. They don't really seem to have the size in here, but it definitely felt, the second biggest of the Moss Performance Quad 160, and I like that. You got that just nice black base. They know you're going to be off-piste a lot. They get it. So they're like, hey, we're giving you all black with just a little die cut, just a little inlay, so you remember who we are when you're throwing a method off a cliff. So, when you look at the camber profile here, you look at this way, and you're like, okay, this looks like it has more tail than the Performance Quad. But then when you lay it down, you see how much rocker. I mean, basically the rocker starts right off here. So yes, in powder, you feel like you have a little more tail than maybe the Performance Quad. But when you lean up to butter, it's just like, you're like, God, I've got no tail. These are all super tailless, super off the tail, super set back surfboards. I mean, I can't stress enough how much riding Moss is really like surfing snow. Being a surfer in my past, now I mainly snowboard, but there was a time where I only surfed every day, all day. And I love this kind of feel, but I gotta say, it takes a lot for you to get used to when it comes to riding the snow when you're not in powder. This is quite an adjustment because you're so far off the tail. It is so surfy. It is so different than any other surf style snowboard that there really is an adjustment period that it takes you a while to get used to just being like so far off the tail. You really far off the tail, and it's quite an adjustment period. And let me kind of show you why. So like if you wanted to set it all the way back, you're at about 22, which is cool because it's a little wider than the Performance Quad 160. And if you want to go as wide as you can get to 24 and a half. Or if you want to go as narrow as you can get to about 19 3/4. And that's using, the center normal inserts with, mini discs. You can get a little further back and a little closer, that kind of thing. But now if you want to set it all the way back with that 22-inch stance width, which is doable for me. I'm usually more into being closer to 23, but I can live with 22 and up. 22 and a half to 23 is kind of my sweet spot. Closer to 23, 22 and 3/4, like 58 centimeters is perfection for me. But 22 is definitely livable, especially with a surf style board like this. And you can see it's got some camber too, which is kind of cool, but I digress. 29 inches from the nose to the back insert, 29 inches. Now, let's look at this. 10 and a half? Holy fuck. So what is that, 18 and a half inches back on board? Is that right? 29, 10, 19. Yeah, 18 and a half inches back on board. That is just nuts. That is so far back. I mean, 10 inches to me is really far back and really surfy. 4.5 for an all mountain board is kind of like about as far as we've seen it go. Free ride boards, like kind of more in the 5 to 8 range. And then powder boards, you know, you're kind of looking at 10, but damn, 18.5 inches back on board really shows you why this is so incredibly surfy and so far set back. It's just nuts. And that's why there's such an adjustment, because you really are riding powder like this. It's not like the, you know, like the Jones Hovercraft or the Yes Optimistic, where you're kind of sitting on the snow and you're sitting on top and you're barely sinking. This is like riding a performance shortboard. And maybe it's a little more, you know, a little, just maybe a touch less surfy than the performance quads. But I mean, both are so far on the surf spectrum, like so far on the surfy side of the spectrum, you know, our skates over here and surfies over here, that it's almost like a moot point saying which one's more surfy. I mean, all the Moss boards I've tried are so much more surfy than almost any other snowboard I've ever tried, maybe save like the Gentem Stick, Rocketfish or Rocketfish HP, and I actually like these a little better than the Rocketfish. The Rocketfish just felt super small and tail light, where this at least it feels just as tail light. You really have to get some weight off the tail to really make it work, but this felt a little more fun riding groomers, even though all the video and the review above is kind of powder, but it's, or most of it, but this is what it is. And you know, this was our second favorite, probably because it was the second largest, but yeah, this is just surf away, just surfier, more surfy than you've ever surfed snow. Let's just put it that way. And that's kind of how you see Moss. It's a very unique style, and it's good to see Moss in North America kind of getting their snow surf style of brand over here, because they've been around forever, you know, since the early 80s. So that's pretty special to see them still around.